this is known as strip grazing. Not ideal in terms of absolutely failure. The ideal, we'd obviously close the back line off as well, so that they don't walk over the stuff they've already grazed, but water is an issue here, so that's a limiting factor. Down the track we'll put in different points so that we can move the water trough closer to the concentrated area that they are eating at. The tape is what they call horse tape. It's actually electric fencing. So you can see in the distance behind me there's a little solar panel. The solar panel's got a battery and that powers an energizer. Just basically gives out a little shock every now and again. What that shock does, it controls them and it conditions them just to not cross the line. We've got my stock managers. Silo's, he's in charge of the cattle management on this section. He's got his own sort of regime that he runs here. Every day he'll come and basically feed, check on them, and then move the fencing. Probably take him about half an hour to an hour, but at the same point he can always monitor the stock and make sure that he's seeing the animals, because it's, you know, it's all about how a cow eats at the end of the day in terms of how it affects your grass. What it does, it basically takes its tongue, it'll twist the grass and pull it off. Okay, so that's really how a cow eats, versus a sheep or something that will nibble it right into the ground and exposes this whole area. Now this is all, if you want to look here, this is what you call your humus layer, which is all this stuff which basically helps for absorption of water and all the rest. So when you're getting rain and a downpour, you're not getting the water that actually just runs away, you know, and that's the key aspect of building up humus. Now, I mean, you can clearly see the line over here. That was yesterday where they ate, and this is fresh grass today that they've been given here. So there's about 5 tons. We measured the other day about 5 tons of material on my right here, and they've probably taken off about 70%, 3.5 tons off on the left hand side, which is exactly what you're trying to do when you're doing burning management, is to really take off this top layer of grass, that over there. So what you do is, you're exposing the green, okay, over here to the sunlight so that it can photosynthesize, because that's all about producing sugar. So what you're doing is you're using the solar panel of the sun, photosynthesizes, the plant produces sugar, it feeds then obviously its roots, it feeds the whole microorganism structure under the soil, and that's what keeps the soil alive. So if you don't have a cover on the top with green, then your soil is also basically dead, or dormant should I say. And that's the reason when we went this morning and we did the planting and that kind of thing with what they call pasture cropping, in this environment here, obviously where we can, depending on how rough it is, of stone or whatever, we're going to come in with a plant and actually plant cereals, clovers, etc., into the veld, so that it maintains that green cycle all the year, the whole year through, so that you can basically keep photosynthesis happening, keep your soil alive. And that means you have to feed less artificial supplementation to your animals to keep them gaining weight throughout the season. So you're really creating a structure where you've got a green cover crop all year round. So that's really the intent at the end of the day. Veld fed beef, which is what this basically is, using the animals in a totally natural environment, without antibiotics, without hormones, without all the rest of it that people are obviously worried about. And the only difference between, well, not the only difference, but a major difference between feedlot fed beef and veld fed beef is what they call CLA, which is conjugated linoleic acid. Get that one right, okay. But basically what it is, it's very high in terms of omega-3. And Tim Noakes is a strong sort of backer of CLA and grass-fed beef, and that's one of the only places you can get it. So, you know, this kind of meat that you're producing here is basically some of the healthiest you can ever wish to eat. But should it go into an intensive environment where you're obviously feeding animals with grain and all the rest of it, it changes how their stomachs work, it changes the microorganisms in the stomach, it changes the way they absorb food, and then obviously they need a lot of medication to stop them from being sick, because they're very concentrated, and we've got to do that obviously to be able to feed people. Whereas here we are forcing them to eat, but we're forcing them to eat natural, and that's the biggest thing at the end of the day. So, and the same time as forcing them to eat natural is you're trying to get them to be the munchers which keep your grass healthy, because this is all about looking after your resource. You know, our whole process of farming here is about stewardship. It's about what we do today, is it sustainable for tomorrow? And I mean, that's really the whole focus in everything that we're basically doing, is to make sure that's not a short-term process, it's all about long-term. You know, because at the end of the day, if your soil's healthy, if your microorganisms are healthy, your grass is healthy, your animal's healthy, we eat the animals, and obviously we're taking in top-end DNA at the end of the day, which our bodies convert. Now the problem is in conventional agriculture, and we've all done it because that's just how things roll and how we know things, is that you use chemicals, you use artificial stimulants, you use all sorts of things to try and counteract the problems you basically artificially create. And you've got to get nature back into balance where it can balance itself, and use the animal as a critical part of that process. So that's an example of what's happening here today. These animals will basically get fed new stretches of grass, if you will, every single day, and then they are concentrated. They also don't burn a lot of energy because obviously they're eating more, but they're not having to forage or walk around as much and spend a lot of energy. There's not one animal here that's been fed an antibiotic. And that's one of our key focuses and sort of visions for the future, is that the consumer around the table can say, listen, I want to know where my food's come from, I want to see where it's grown, and there's complete transparency from literally when the animal's born to when the animal is basically, utilized.